I'm not the kind of guy who believes a house can have feelings, but the day we closed on the old place on Maple Ridge, it felt like the walls were holding their breath. The price was suspiciously low for the neighborhood, the kind of number that makes you reread the listing 3 times and ask the realtor if there's a sinkhole under the living room. She smiled too much, said words like motivated seller and great bones and a little TLC, and my fiancée Emma squeezed my hand like we just tricked the universe into handing us a starter home with a backyard and a porch swing. We were both 29, sick of renting, armed with YouTube tutorials, a roll of painter's tape, and more optimism than cash. On paper, the house was doable: 1930s craftsman, original hardwood under tired carpet, a kitchen that needed everything, and a detached garage suite talked into being a studio. The inspection flagged electrical that predated good sense, a roof with 1 or 2 winters left, and a foundation that would be fine if you don't make it mad. We laughed, because what else do you do when you're broken in love and the dream has copper pipes that sound like they're coughing? The first weekend, we tore out the gross carpet, posted the worst photos to our group chat like trophies, and opened every window to let the place breathe. That's when we noticed something odd: the hallway on the second floor didn't match the floor plan we'd printed from the county site. Our hallway ran straight as an arrow to the main bedroom, with a shallow linen closet on the left. The county drawing showed a jog, a little notch that should have been a door. I told myself the records were old, or someone remodeled weirdly in the 80s after watching too much HGTV, but once you see a wrong angle in a house, it starts to itch. Emma felt it too. On day 3, while I was scrubbing nicotine off crown molding, she called me upstairs with that voice that means either spider or discovery. She'd emptied the linen closet and pulled out the shelves. Behind the cheap MDF, there was a strip of older plaster, trowel marks, hairline cracks, like the closet had been carved out of something that existed before. The tape measure told the rude truth: from the hallway to the exterior wall should have been 9 feet, we had barely 6. Where did 3 feet go? Emma asked, and we stood there pressing our palms to cold plaster like we could read Braille in drywall dust. We tapped like idiots, listening for hollow versus solid, and at shoulder height dead center, there it was, a bang with belly, not bone. Hollow. I grinned like a kid with a secret map. Emma didn't grin back. If we open this up and find rats, I'm making you sleep in the garage, she said, which is her way of saying do it but don't make me say I said do it. I grabbed a utility knife, cut a neat rectangle through the top layer, and pulled. The gypsum came away in a chalky cough, revealing old lath slats and a small set of rusted hinges half buried in joint compound. We weren't crazy. Someone had sealed a door. The hinges were too narrow for a standard swing. This had been a narrow in-swing panel, maybe a servant's cupboard, maybe a laundry chute, maybe something that made sense before the era of avocado green appliances. My heart ran ahead of my head. I pried another section, bent a cheap pry bar, swore, then got smart and drilled a starter hole to see what we were dealing with. The bit punched through and all at once a quick draft hit my face: cool, stale, not rotten exactly, but old, like a museum without visitors. Emma stepped back. I don't like that smell, she said. I did, in a weird way. It smelled like history. I widened the opening until I could slide my arm through and click my phone flashlight on, and what I saw made me forget the dust in my mouth. It wasn't a crawlspace or a duct. It was wallpaper. Flowered, sun-faded wallpaper inches beyond the lath. And beyond that, empty space. A room. Not big, maybe 8 by 10, but finished, baseboards, a sliver of window, a picture hung crooked on the far wall. My brain couldn't reconcile it. Who walls off a finished room and pretends it never existed? Emma read my face and made a noise I only hear during true weirdness. Nope, she said. We call someone. Who? I asked. Ghostbusters? She rolled her eyes, but she was scared, and I was excited, and between those two feelings we always land on curiosity. I shut off the power to be safe, lined the floor with a drop cloth like a responsible idiot, and we cut a doorway where a doorway used to be. The last chunk of lath popped and an entire sheet of plaster slumped forward, and then we were staring into a room that had not seen people in a long time. Dust softened everything. There was a child's iron bed with no mattress, just springs. A bookshelf with a few hardcovers slumped sideways. A small wooden desk with a cup full of dried-up crayons turned to chalk. The wallpaper's flowers had faded to ghost bouquets. On the desk sat a shoebox with a ribbon tied twice. And on the far wall, under that crooked picture frame, a nail with a string still hanging, like something had been taken down in a hurry. We didn't step in right away. You would think we'd rush in, but the silence made us whisper. Rooms make their own weather, and this one was cooler by a few degrees, like shade on a hot day, and it gave me goosebumps that had nothing to do with dead people and everything to do with the feeling you get when you walk into a classroom in July, like you're trespassing on someone's paused life. Eventually Emma exhaled and crossed the threshold first, because she's braver than she lets on. The floorboards didn't complain. The little window was painted shut and filmed over with grime, but enough light leaked in to make the dust dance. She touched the bedpost with 2 fingers like she was saying hello to a shy animal. I went to the desk, because of course I did, because if there's a shoebox with a ribbon in a hidden room, the universe writes you open this now in Sharpie across your forehead. The ribbon came untied too easily, like it had been loosened a dozen times before and retied gently. Inside were photographs, black and whites with scalloped edges, the kind you see in thrift stores, only these weren't strangers. Well, they were, but they weren't. The same staircase banister. The same odd oval window at the landing. The same porch swing. People standing exactly where we stand now, only wearing different decades. A little girl with bangs too short, grinning with both front teeth missing, holding a stuffed rabbit by one ear. A teenage boy on the roof with a slingshot, smirk like he knows he's trouble. A woman in a shirtwaist dress, her smile polite and pinched, hand on the little girl's shoulder that says hold still. And a man with a part so sharp it could cut, standing on our front walk, his hand in his pocket and his other hand held up as if to block whoever was taking the picture. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't anything. Just, there, like a shadow had borrowed a body. Emma leaned over my shoulder. Who are they? She asked. I flipped the photos, hoping for captions, dates, something. Only two had writing. On the back of the little girl, M, first day in her big room. On the back of the man with the non-smile, do not forget. The handwriting was neat, the kind of script you learn when teachers still whack knuckles for sloppy loops. I felt that stupid little thrill again, the one you get when you find a note in a library book, but under it I felt something heavier. Do not forget what? Who wrote that to themselves, or to us, from a future they couldn't imagine? This is cool, I said, which is what you say when your brain needs 5 more minutes to catch up to your heart. Emma pointed at the crooked frame on the wall and said, can you fix that? It's driving me crazy. I reached up and lifted it off the nail. Underneath, the wallpaper was brighter, clean where sun hadn't faded it, and in the center, pressed into the plaster like someone had done it with a spoon and patience, were 4 initials and a year, M plus T 1968. Above them, a shallow little scratched line, like the tick mark people make to measure a kid's height. I lined the frame back up to cover the carving, and Emma said, wait, don't take one more photo first, and that's when we both heard it downstairs, very clear, the hollow thump of mail through the slot and then the soft drag of something heavier being slid against our front door. We froze, looked at each other, and then both laughed because we were wound too tight. Probably a package, I said, but the sound put our nerves back upright. We left the room as carefully as we entered it, like it could crack, and I taped a contractor bag loosely over the opening in case of dust. At the front door, there was no package. No flyer. No nothing. Just our porch, the street, and the neighbor across the way pretending to water the same square foot of lawn while staring at our house like he'd seen it grow a second porch. He jerked his chin and went back inside when he caught me looking. When I opened the door to check the slot, a plain envelope tipped into my hand. No stamp, no address. Just our house number written in that same neat, old-fashioned script as the photo. Do not open that room. When you find something that feels like it doesn't want to be found, you tell yourself you'll stop digging, that you'll be normal again tomorrow, that you'll just focus on paint colors and Target rugs like any other couple fixing up their first house. That's what Emma wanted. She taped up a sheet of plastic over the opening and said we'd deal with it later, maybe after we moved in properly, maybe never. But the thing about a secret is that once you've cracked it open, it keeps whispering until you answer. I couldn't stop thinking about the notebook, the Polaroids, the smell of old crayons, and the fact that a child's life had been sealed in plaster like it was something to be ashamed of. The next weekend Emma's parents came by to see the progress. I'd begged her not to mention the room, not until we had facts, but when her dad saw the taped up plastic in the hall, he tapped it with his knuckle and said, "What's this, asbestos?" Emma froze for a second too long. Her mom, who has the radar of a hawk for anything unusual, narrowed her eyes. "What are you two hiding?" Emma deflected with something about just some ugly wiring, but her parents looked at each other in that married people way that says they didn't believe a word. Later, when I asked why she froze, she admitted, because the second I thought about lying, it felt like the room heard me. I didn't tell her about the neighbor across the street. The night after we opened the room, I caught him standing on his porch at midnight, smoking, staring straight at our upstairs windows. Not casual staring, focused, like he was waiting for a shadow to cross the glass. When I raised my hand in a polite half-wave, he stubbed his cigarette so hard it sparked, turned, and went inside without a word. Emma was serious about closing it up, so I tried. I went to Home Depot, bought drywall, joint compound, everything you need to erase history. But when I stood there with a fresh panel leaning against the doorframe, I couldn't make myself lift it. I just stood staring at the shoebox on the desk, at the crooked calendar, at the empty bed like it was waiting for someone to tuck it in. My hand shook so hard I dropped a screw and it rolled under the dresser, and when I knelt to get it, I saw something taped underneath. It was a folded piece of lined paper, brittle from age, edges curled. I peeled it free and opened it carefully. The writing was a child's again, looping and uneven. "If I am not here, look under the porch." No date. No name. Just those words. I should have told Emma right away, but instead I folded it into my pocket. It felt like a command meant only for me. That night, when Emma fell asleep on the couch, I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The porch skirt was half-rotted plywood nailed in haphazardly. I pried one panel up and shined my light inside. Nothing but cobwebs, leaves, and the skeleton of a raccoon long gone. I crawled further, ignoring the way the boards groaned above me, and at the far corner I found it, a small tin lunchbox with faded superheroes on the lid. It rattled when I pulled it free. My chest tightened. I carried it to the driveway, sat under the motion light, and flipped the latch. Inside were more Polaroids, these ones darker, blurrier, taken inside the very room we'd found. The little girl was in most of them, smiling too wide, like someone had told her to look happy. In one she was holding a doll with an arm missing. In another, she was wearing the same strawberry sweater but sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands clenched into fists in her lap. And in the last photo, the bed was empty, covers thrown back, the doll on the floor. No people. Just absence. There was also a cassette tape at the bottom of the box, labeled in black marker, Maddie, bedtime. I don't own a cassette player anymore, but I knew right then I'd find one. Because whatever was on that tape, I needed to hear it. I spent the next 2 days obsessing over that cassette, turning the little plastic rectangle over and over in my hands like it might give up its secrets if I stared hard enough. Emma noticed, of course. She always does. You're going to drive yourself insane, she muttered as she stepped over paint cans in the dining room. I didn't tell her about the photos in the lunchbox yet, or about the note taped under the dresser. It felt like if I unloaded everything at once, she'd pack a bag and head to her mom's until I sealed the room back up. But the truth is, I couldn't stop myself. On Saturday morning I drove to the flea market 2 towns over, the kind with rows of folding tables stacked with yellowed paperbacks, mismatched Tupperware, and old electronics piled like metal corpses. I found the cassette player at a table run by a guy in a John Deere cap who smelled like oil and Marlboros. $5 and the promise it worked last time he checked. I bought batteries at a gas station and sat in my car in the parking lot like a junkie with a fix. The tape hissed before the sound kicked in, that warm static fuzz I hadn't heard since the 90s. Then a voice, low and steady. A man's voice. Time for bed, Madison. A pause. The sound of something creaking, maybe the bed springs. Then the child's voice, soft, higher than I expected. Can I leave the light on? A beat of silence. Then the man again, firmer this time, no. We talked about this. The tape went quiet for a few seconds, just hiss and the faint sound of breathing. Then the man again, sing the song. The girl started singing You Are My Sunshine, off-key, nervous. At the end of the first verse, her voice cracked, and she whispered, I don't want to. The man's voice sharpened, almost a growl, sing it again. I stopped the tape there. My hands were sweating. I sat in that car with the engine off, my chest tight, like I'd swallowed a stone. Whoever recorded that wasn't a dad capturing bedtime memories. It was control. It was power. It was something I didn't want to name out loud. I drove home in silence, the tape heavy in my pocket. Emma was in the kitchen, hair tied up, scraping wallpaper, and when she saw my face she froze. What happened? She asked. I thought about lying. I really did. But then I pulled the tape out and set it on the counter between us. It's her, I said. It's Maddie. Someone made her, I couldn't even finish. I pressed play again, and we stood there together as the voice filled the kitchen. When the girl started singing, Emma's hand flew to her mouth. By the time the man snapped sing it again, she was shaking her head violently, whispering turn it off, turn it off. We didn't speak for a long time. Finally she said, we need to call somebody. But who? The police? What would I even say that I found a sealed room, a box of Polaroids, and a creepy tape? They'd laugh me out of the station. Or worse, they'd take the evidence and bury it again, the same way someone had buried that room. That night I dreamed of the little girl standing in our hallway, hair in her eyes, holding the doll with the missing arm. She opened her mouth to sing, but no sound came out. When I woke up, the clock on the nightstand we'd found in the room, the unplugged one, was ticking softly, even though it had no battery. I shook Emma awake. She heard it too. We both stood there in the doorway of that hidden room, staring at the clock as its second hand clicked forward, slow and steady. Emma whispered, it doesn't want to stay closed. And for the first time, I believed her. I couldn't stop thinking about that tape. The sound of her voice, the way she hesitated, the way she asked to keep the light on, the way the man's tone cut through her like a blade, it was burned into me. I woke up with the song in my head, humming without realizing, and Emma snapped at me one morning, stop. Please. She wasn't angry at me, just rattled. The house felt different now, like the walls had been waiting for us to hear it. I decided to dig deeper. If Maddie existed, if she really lived here, there had to be a paper trail, school records, census data, old news clippings. Emma begged me not to, but then she sighed, put her jacket on, and said, fine. I'm not letting you go alone. We started at the county records office. It smelled like old paper and burnt coffee, the kind of place where time itself seems to move slower. A clerk with glasses on a chain squinted at us as we asked about the house's history. She tapped on her keyboard, then frowned. Odd. The file skips a year. She turned the monitor toward us, ownership records jumped straight from 2004 to 2006. Nothing in between. Could be a clerical error, she said, but her voice didn't sound convinced. Next stop was the library. We combed through microfilm like detectives from some forgotten TV show. Emma found the first clue, a tiny notice buried in the classifieds from April 2003. Moving sale, everything must go. Maple and 3rd, cash only. No names, no details. Just a house trying to shed its skin. The librarian, a thin man with shaky hands, hovered nearby. When Emma asked about old yearbooks, he perked up. What school? He asked. We guessed the local elementary. He shuffled into the back and came out with 2 cracked volumes from the early 2000s. And there she was, Maddie B., grade 5. Same crooked smile. Same bangs too short. My stomach dropped. She was real. She wasn't a ghost story. She was a kid who went to school, posed for pictures, circled dentist appointments on calendars. But after 2003, nothing. She vanished from the yearbooks. No transfer notes, no moved away caption. Just erased. On the way home, the car was dead silent. Emma clutched the yearbook photocopy so hard it wrinkled. Finally she whispered, "Where did she go?" I didn't have an answer. That night, back at the house, things got worse. We heard footsteps in the sealed room while we were in bed. Not settling wood. Footsteps. Emma grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug in. I wanted to say it was the house adjusting, but I'd seen the dust on that floor. Nobody had walked there in years. The next morning, I found the tape player back on the desk in the hidden room. I hadn't left it there. I know I hadn't. The cassette was still inside, but the label had changed. New writing, jagged, rushed, do not stop. My hands went ice cold. Emma begged me to throw it away, to burn it if I had to. But I couldn't. Because now it wasn't just about curiosity. It was about a little girl who asked to leave her light on. About a bedroom sealed away like it never existed. About a family that vanished without a trace. And about the feeling, deep in my chest, that someone didn't want us digging any further. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that little voice whispering from the tape, "Can I leave the light on?" Over and over until it blended with the creaks of the house. At 3 a.m., I gave up and padded down the hall. The hidden room seemed to breathe in the dark, the plastic Emma had taped up over the opening ballooning slightly, as if the room itself exhaled. I pulled it aside, sat at the desk with the cassette player, and pressed play again. The hiss filled the air, followed by the man's voice, low and sharp. Again. Maddie's voice, tiny, sang the song once more. She faltered halfway through, and the sound of something hitting wood made me flinch. She whimpered but kept going. After the second verse, silence. Then the man, better. Now count. Maddie started counting slowly, whispering numbers. At 12, she stopped. The man barked, "Don't stop." She cried quietly, whispered 13, 14, until her voice broke. Then a click, like the recorder being stopped. I thought that was it, but after a few seconds the tape screeched and more hiss came back. Another session. The man's voice was softer this time, almost coaxing. "Tell me your secret." Maddie whispered something too faint to catch. He pressed her, louder. Then I heard it clear, trembling, "Mom said don't tell." My throat closed. The man's voice hardened, I said, "Tell me." Then the tape cut off with a loud pop. I sat there with my pulse hammering, stomach twisting. This wasn't bedtime. This was evidence. This was a child being broken down night after night, and someone had recorded it deliberately. The next day, I told Emma everything. She went pale, then angry. "We have to take this to the police." But I could see the doubt in her eyes even as she said it. Old tapes, old Polaroids, a sealed room, would the cops even believe us? Or would they dismiss it as ancient family drama? Still, we agreed, tomorrow, we'd go. That afternoon, I stepped outside to take the trash and froze. The neighbor across the street, the one who'd been watching, was standing at the edge of his lawn, arms crossed. "Found the room yet?" he called out. My blood ran cold. He said it like he knew. Like he'd been waiting. I swallowed and asked, "What do you mean?" He smirked without humor. "You think you're the first? You should leave it sealed. That family, they left for a reason." Before I could ask more, he turned and slammed his door. When I told Emma, she wanted to confront him, but I held her back. Something about the way he said it, it wasn't a warning, it was a threat. That night, Emma swore she heard whispering in the vents. I told her it was in her head, but when I lay awake, I heard it too. Not words, just the rise and fall of a voice too soft to pin down. In the morning, the tape player was running again. I hadn't touched it. The reel had wound itself to the end, spinning uselessly, hissing into silence. On the desk, scratched into the dust with a fingertip, were 3 words, "Do not stop." And for the first time, I wondered if we'd made a mistake opening that room at all. Emma made me promise we'd go to the police, so the next morning we carried the shoebox with the Polaroids, the note from under the dresser, and the cassette tape in a Ziploc bag. Walking into the station felt surreal, like we were characters in someone else's mystery. We sat down with a desk officer, a guy with thinning hair who looked more tired than suspicious. I slid the box across the desk, explained about the sealed room, the photos, the tape. He didn't even open the bag. Just leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Look," he said, "we get calls like this sometimes. People buy old houses, find weird stuff. Doesn't always mean a crime was committed." I pushed harder. But there was a crime. Listen to the tape. That girl, Maddie, she was being hurt. He tapped his pen against the desk, annoyed. "Do you know how old this tape is? Statute of limitations is tricky, and if the family's gone, it's not really our jurisdiction anymore. What do you want me to do, send out a manhunt for someone who moved 20 years ago?" Emma was trembling beside me. "So you're just going to ignore this?" The officer's eyes softened a little. "Ma'am, I'm not ignoring it. I'll file a report. But without a victim coming forward, there's not much we can do. He handed the tape back like it was nothing more than an old toy we dug out of the attic. On the drive home, Emma was silent, gripping the shoebox in her lap like it was the only fragile piece of truth left. I felt sick. We'd done the right thing, and it got us nowhere. That night, when I went to take the trash out, I caught 3 neighbors across the street standing together in the dark, whispering. They stopped the moment they saw me. One of them, the woman with the hydrangeas, shook her head slowly and muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "Should have left it alone." By the next morning, the whole street felt different. The mailman wouldn't meet my eyes. A kid on a bike rode past and hissed, "Freak house." Someone left a flyer under our door that just said "Sell now" in block letters, no phone number, no company. Inside the house, the air grew heavier. Emma swore the calendar in the hidden room, the one stuck in April 2003, had shifted forward a day. I told her she imagined it, but when I checked, she was right. The page was curled differently, the circle around the dentist appointment darker, like someone had traced it again overnight. And then came the noise. Not whispers this time. Knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks from inside the sealed room while we were in the kitchen. Emma dropped her mug, coffee splattering across the floor. We stood frozen, listening. 3 more knocks. Evenly spaced. Patient. I forced myself to open the door to the hidden room. The desk, the bed, the shoebox, all untouched. But on the wall above the height marks, new words had appeared, jagged and faint, as if written with a child's hand in pencil, "Don't leave me." Emma broke then. She screamed, grabbed her keys, and bolted to her car. I ran after her, but she locked the doors, tears streaking her face. "I can't stay here," she sobbed through the glass. "I can't." She drove off, leaving me standing in the driveway under the eyes of every neighbor who just happened to be outside at that exact moment. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about Maddie anymore. The whole street knew. The whole neighborhood was complicit. And Emma was right, we should have never opened that room. But it was too late to close it now. Emma didn't come home that night. She stayed at her sister's, texting me short-clipped messages like "I need space and please don't go back in that room." I didn't blame her. But the house didn't feel empty without her, it felt crowded. I slept on the couch with the lights on, the cassette tape and shoebox sitting on the coffee table like guard dogs. At 2 a.m., the power went out. Not the whole block, just our house. I checked the breaker, nothing tripped. When I came back inside, the plastic sheet we taped over the hidden room was on the floor, peeled back like someone had walked through. I taped it again, double this time, and sat awake until the sun came up. The next morning, I decided I couldn't rely on the police, and Emma wasn't going to help anymore, not while she was scared. So I did what I always do when I'm desperate, I started digging. I went to the county clerk again, asked for probate records connected to the estate sale from 2004. The clerk was annoyed but eventually handed me a thin folder. Inside was a single sheet, transfer of ownership from Thomas and Margaret B. to the bank. No forwarding address. No obituary. Just a family erased by paperwork. But the name stuck, Thomas B. If Maddie's last initial was B, that had to be her father. I spent hours online searching public records, old directories, anything. Finally, buried in a 2002 PTA newsletter scanned by some digital archive, I found a Margaret B. listed as treasurer, with 1 child in 5th grade, Madison. I had proof. But no trail after 2003. Frustrated, I drove to the oldest house on the block, a sagging yellow 2-story where I'd seen the curtains twitch more than once. An older man answered the door, white hair, thick glasses, the kind of guy who'd lived on one street his entire life. When I asked about the family who used to live in my house, his face drained of color. He started to shut the door, but I wedged my foot in the frame. "Please," I begged. "I know about the room. I know about Maddie." He closed his eyes, sighed, and let me in. His living room smelled of old books and mothballs. He sat heavily in a chair and stared at the floor for a long moment before speaking. "You shouldn't have opened that room," he said. "I didn't know it was there," I said. "Why was it sealed?" He rubbed his temples. "Because no one wanted to remember." Piece by piece, he told me the story. The B. family moved into the house in the late 90s. Nice enough at first, but Thomas was strict, controlling. Neighbors whispered about shouting at night, about Maddie showing up to school late, looking tired. Then one spring, the little girl stopped showing up altogether. The mother, Margaret, told people she was being homeschooled now. A month later, the family vanished. House went dark, blinds drawn. 2 years after that, the bank sold it. "What happened to Maddie?" I asked, my voice breaking. He looked at me with watery eyes. "We never saw her again. Some folks said she ran away. Some said worse. All I know is, the day after she disappeared, I heard hammering from that house. All day, all night. Like someone was building a wall. The room spun around me. I asked why no one called the police, why no one did anything. He shook his head. This neighborhood, people keep to themselves. And when something ugly happens, they look the other way. Safer that way." Before I left, he grabbed my wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. If you're smart, you'll seal that room back up and forget her like we all did. That house eats people who don't. When I stepped back onto the porch, I felt every curtain on the street watching me. Every neighbor who pretended not to know. And I realized the truth, this wasn't just about one family's secret. It was about a whole community that chose silence. But I couldn't be silent. Not anymore. That night, I played the tape again. And this time, at the very end, buried under static, I heard something I hadn't noticed before. A whisper, faint but clear, still here. And my blood turned to ice. Emma came back 3 days later. She looked like she hadn't slept, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled into a messy bun, jaw tight. She didn't hug me when she walked in. She didn't even take off her jacket. She just stood in the living room, eyes flicking between the shoebox on the coffee table and the taped-up plastic over the hidden room. "You're still in it, aren't you?" she said flatly. I admitted it. I told her about the old neighbor, about the hammering, about the family that vanished. About how the whole street knew but pretended not to. I even told her about the whisper on the tape, still here. I expected her to storm out again. Instead, she sat down on the couch and pressed her palms to her face. "This place is killing us," she whispered. "I can feel it." That night, we argued. She wanted to board the room permanently, call a contractor, plaster over everything and move on. "We're not detectives," she said. "We're not saviors. We bought a house, not a ghost story." But I couldn't let it go. "If we bury it again, we're no better than the people who built that wall the first time," I snapped. My voice echoed too loud in the living room. She flinched. The next morning, we found a note under our windshield wiper. Block letters, Sharpie, "Stop digging or you're next." No signature. Just those words. Emma's hands shook so badly she dropped her coffee. We checked the street, everyone was just going about their business, watering lawns, getting into cars, waving at each other like we were the only ones out of step. That afternoon, a brick came through our mailbox. No note this time, just the message itself. It was clear, they wanted us silent. Emma cried that night. She said she wanted to go back to her sister's, pack a bag, and leave me with this cursed house. I begged her to stay. I promised her I'd stop, that I'd seal it tomorrow, that I'd call a contractor and never say Maddie's name again. But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. Because the house wasn't letting us ignore it anymore. At 1 a.m. we both woke to the sound of the tape recorder playing by itself. Not the same bedtime session we'd heard before, something new. Heavy breathing, frantic footsteps, a door slamming. Then Maddie's voice, panicked, "Don't shut me in. Please." Then the tape cut to silence. Emma covered her ears and screamed at me to turn it off. I did, but the damage was done. She sat rocking on the couch, whispering, "She doesn't want to be forgotten. She doesn't want to be in there alone." I realized then that Emma wasn't just scared anymore, she was starting to believe. The next day, she surprised me. She said, "If we can't trust the police, and we can't trust the neighbors, then we have to go bigger. We take it public. Online. Everywhere. Let people know what happened here." I hesitated. "You know what that means, right? They'll come after us harder. They'll try to bury us too." She looked me dead in the eye. "Then at least we'll go down telling the truth." That evening, we set up my phone on a tripod in the hidden room. Emma cleaned the dust off the desk, set the Polaroids out in neat rows, laid the tape player beside them. We filmed everything, the sealed wall, the initials carved into the plaster, the calendar frozen in April 2003. I read aloud from the notebook, Emma held up the library card. And then, shaking, I played the tape for the camera. We didn't talk about what was on it, we just let the voices speak for themselves. When the recording ended, Emma stared at the lens and said, her name was Madison. She was 11. And nobody should be allowed to erase a child like that. We uploaded the video to a subreddit for unsolved mysteries. Within an hour, it was climbing. Comments poured in, some calling it fake, others demanding police involvement, a few saying they remembered whispers about the family that used to live here. But the scariest comment came from a brand new account with no history. 6 words, "You should have kept it sealed." The upvotes kept climbing. Our secret was no longer just ours. And for the first time, I wondered, what if unleashing it wasn't saving Maddie at all, but giving her a louder voice to haunt us with? The video exploded faster than either of us expected. By the next morning, it had thousands of upvotes and was spreading beyond Reddit, reposted on Twitter, TikTok, even a local news outlet that ran a short piece titled "Couple Finds Hidden Room in Old House, Disturbing Evidence Surfaces." Our phones wouldn't stop buzzing. Half the internet thought we were heroes uncovering a cold case. The other half thought we were liars chasing clout. But the loudest voices were the ones closest to us, our neighbors. When I stepped outside that morning, every eye on the street was on me. Not subtle this time. Mrs. Hydrangea didn't look away. She glared, jaw set, watering her plants with enough force to drown them. The man across the street, the one who had warned me before, didn't even pretend anymore. He walked right up to the edge of our lawn, leaned in, and said, "You brought this on yourselves." Then he spat in the grass and walked away. By noon, someone had spray-painted liars across our garage door. By evening, another brick shattered our front window, this one wrapped in a note: "Take it down, or else." Emma wanted to call the police again, but I laughed bitterly. What are they going to do, take another report and file it under trash? Inside the house, it wasn't just us anymore. The noises escalated. No more knocks or whispers. Now it was movement. Furniture shifted in the hidden room when we weren't inside. The desk chair scraped across the floor loud enough to wake us both at 2 a.m. I sprinted down the hall, yanked the plastic sheet aside, and found the chair angled toward the bed. The tape recorder sat on the pillow. Playing. This time it wasn't bedtime. It was an argument. Maddie crying, begging, "Please don't shut it, I'll be good." The man's voice, cold, quiet. Then a slam so loud it distorted the tape. Emma ran in behind me, screaming for me to stop it, but I couldn't. My hands were frozen. The tape kept running until it went dead. We sat on the hallway floor until morning, Emma clutching my arm so hard I could feel bruises forming. When the sun came up, we found something new: the Polaroids. We had left them in the shoebox. Now they were pinned to the wall above the height marks in the hidden room, arranged in neat rows, all facing us. Every single one of Maddie staring straight at the camera. Emma broke down. She screamed that she couldn't take it anymore, that the house wanted us gone, that maybe the neighbors were right. "This isn't justice, this is punishment," she sobbed. I held her, but inside I was just as broken. Later that day, a reporter showed up unannounced. She was young, eager, with a cameraman in tow. She wanted to do a feature for the evening news, get our side of the story. Emma refused, but I let them in. I don't know why, maybe I thought if enough light was shined on this, the darkness would shrink. They filmed the room, the Polaroids, even a snippet of the tape. The reporter's face went pale when she heard it. But as they left, she leaned close and whispered, "Be careful. People don't like when old wounds get ripped open." That night, our video was on TV. And so were our faces. Emma collapsed into my arms, whispering, "We can't stay here." I didn't argue this time. I wanted to leave too. But the house had other plans. At 3 a.m., the smoke alarms went off. Not because of fire, there was no smoke. Just shrieking alarms in every room. We scrambled out of bed, fumbling for the breaker, and when I killed the power, the alarms kept going. The sound was unbearable, drilling into my skull. Then, just as suddenly, silence. In the silence, from the hidden room, came a single word in a child's voice, clear as day: "Stay." Emma collapsed to her knees, sobbing. I stood frozen, heart pounding. The neighbors were trying to force us out, the house was trying to keep us in, and Maddie, whatever was left of her, was caught in between. And I realized then that we weren't uncovering a mystery anymore. We were trapped in it. We didn't sleep after that night. Emma sat on the couch with her knees pulled up, rocking back and forth, whispering over and over, "We have to go, we have to go." By dawn, she had a bag packed. She begged me to leave the house for good, not tomorrow, not after work, not after we figured things out now. I agreed. We loaded what we could into the car: clothes, laptops, the shoebox, the tape recorder. Everything else we planned to abandon. But when I tried to start the car, the engine wouldn't turn. Just a sick clicking noise. Emma started crying, pounding the dashboard. I stepped out to pop the hood, and that's when I noticed them, our neighbors. A dozen of them, standing at the ends of their driveways, watching. Not moving. Not speaking. Just staring. One of them, the man who had warned me before, lifted his hand and dragged a finger slowly across his throat. Emma screamed for me to get back inside, so we did. We locked the doors, pulled the blinds, sat in silence. That's when we heard it. From upstairs. The hidden room. The tape player clicking on again. I didn't want to go up. Every muscle in my body told me to stay put, but Emma whispered, "If we don't see what it is, we'll never be free." So I forced myself. Step by step up the staircase, every creak like a gunshot. The plastic sheet was gone. Torn down. The doorway to the hidden room stood open. Inside, the bed was neatly made, quilt smooth flat. The Polaroids were gone. The desk was cleared. The calendar on the wall had flipped forward, July 2003 now, days crossed out one by one until the last page was blank. On the bed sat the tape recorder, spinning, hissing. I stepped closer and realized there was a fresh cassette inside. No label. Just blank plastic. I pressed play. First, the hiss. Then breathing. Then my own voice. "We should have never opened this room." Emma's voice followed, "She doesn't want to be forgotten." It was us. A conversation we'd had in the kitchen days ago. My blood went cold. Then, underneath, another voice joined. A child's whisper, overlapping, weaving through our words, "Don't leave me. Stay with me." Emma grabbed my hand and pulled me back, shaking her head violently, whispering, "It's recording us. It's still recording us." We bolted down the stairs, through the locks, tried the car again, nothing. The neighbors were gone, but I swear I saw movement in their windows. Watching. Always watching. By nightfall, we were still trapped. Emma sat against the door, shaking, while I paced. I wanted to call anyone, but my phone was dead, though I charged it hours earlier. Emma's was the same. Every light in the house flickered in unison, then went dark, plunging us into silence so heavy it pressed against my chest. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks from upstairs. From the hidden room. Emma whispered, "If we answer, we're finished." I whispered back, "If we don't, it'll never stop." The knocks came again. Louder this time. Then a voice, so faint I wasn't sure it was real, still here. That's where I'm writing this from now, the glow of a half-dead laptop, the walls breathing around us, Emma asleep against the door because she's too terrified to close her eyes in the dark. I don't know if we'll ever get out. I don't know if the neighbors will let us. I just know this, Maddie was real. She was forgotten. And this house, this street, won't let us leave until we remember her the way they refused to. If you don't hear from me again, don't buy the house on Maple and 3rd. And if you do, don't open the room.